Hello. So, top 5 upgrades and modifications that I would do to my UDR when I get it. We bought a couple of second-hand ones, so some of these things were already done or perhaps not as much benefit as doing it from new, but we'll just run through what we would recommend. Some of these don't really cost much money at all, but they should just help the thing run more reliable and less maintenance. But you are going to break things with these. If you take it to the skate park and doing big jumps, these things are heavy. You're going to break wishbones. The rear axle on it is quite exposed. You are going to break things. But if you're doing some sensible bashing, you shouldn't have a problem. We've done many hours of driving on these and racing and some jumping, and we haven't really broken much at all. Upgrade 1, the body shell. These body shells are expensive. They're big pieces of kit which get damaged. But what I would recommend doing, shoe glue and self-adhesive scrim or plaster jointing tape. It's like a mesh type thing. Use this. Shoe glue is the most expensive option. You can use a reasonable quality silicone in like a gun type thing. That is cheaper, and that's what I've used on one of these shells, but it gives some more reinforcement to the shells. As you can see, this one, it came like this. We've got quite a bit of damage here, also down round here and round to the rear. But it's a bit embarrassing to show this really on video, and it's pretty filthy, but we used an old silicone that I had in the garage, which didn't completely go off, so it left it slightly tacky, which was good. It gave it extra flexibility, but of course all the dirt stuck to it and it's got this horrible colour. But bit of reinforcement tape in there, a nice thin even layer of shoe glue or silicone, and you see these splits here, they've not got any bigger. We've had some big accidents, but they haven't got any bigger. Done the same around the sides and on the back, and it just helps the shell. These shells are expensive. I don't want to keep replacing them, but it just gives it more strength. The next part is roof protectors. These roof protectors, 3D printed. Again, I can supply these, or there's plenty of options available online, internet, on Amazon, eBay, those sorts of places. It's sacrificial. This one here, see, has already had some damage. This bit here is missing, but it's done its job. This is broken. It hasn't got the body shell. If we look at this body shell here, which hasn't got any of that protection on, it's worn the body shell away. It's almost like a gravel rash type thing. You can see we've got marks there, and this will only get worse. So if you don't put anything on there, eventually it will just wear the Lexine or the polycarbonate. It will go through to the, well, it will just be nothing then. The shell will just fall to bits. So that is a worthwhile upgrade, one I'd recommend, and it isn't very expensive. You can probably do it for 20 quid, the whole lot, the adhesive, the tape, and the roof protectors. Now this one doesn't really cost you anything more other than a little bit of grease. The rear axle on these takes a lot of punishment, and we'll come on to a couple of other bits here which we've upgraded, but the diff gear that's in here does get a lot of punishment. So if you can keep the grit, the dirt, the sand, the water even out of there, the better. It does come in through the axles here. There's only a bearing, which just, that's the only thing to prevent the dirt coming in through the axles. So what we found, when you assemble the axle, when you maintain it, yes, make sure you grease the actual gears, but put a small amount of grease around the joints of the plastics and around the front, and it creates a seal. It won't keep the dust and the dirt out forever, but it will help on the wear of that rear axle. Now for the next tip, we're still staying at the rear of the truck, and we've got the trucks upside down. We've got a standard setup and what I would suggest upgrading for if you can afford to. The first item, the rear upper control arms. Standard, these are really thin metal and they bend. This rear axle takes a lot of punishment. They bend really easy, and you only got to get a slight bend in them. The car tracks out and it handles awful. So if you can afford it, go for something a bit chunkier. These are some nice silver ones. You can see the diameter, compare them. The diameter is much bigger, much stronger. We've not bent them at all. They're still running straight as a die. That's really good, that one is. The other modification, looking at the back of the truck, is the lower control arms. These are the standard plastic ones. They bend, they will break. That's one of the things that I've heard does break sooner rather than later. So again, upgrade to an alloy one. Alloy, not had a problem with these. Yes, we've got some scratches on it, so you can see it's had a fair amount of abuse. We've got plenty of adjustment on there, so we've got all different positions for the shocks to go on. We'll perhaps come on another video with how that actually affects the suspension and the handling. But that is an upgrade that I would recommend. A tip, if you've still got the standard ones, is on the underside of these, they're almost hollow. There's gaps. Fill it with a hot glue or something. That gives it a lot more strength. So that is worth doing. The next suggested upgrade is the rear, or the underneath, protection to the underneath. These metal plates, you can get these, they're not very expensive. It just gives it a bit more protection. You get the front skid plate here, which you can see, this has took a lot of abuse. So that would all have been put on this part here, which is plastic. It's going to wear through, it just won't wear as well as the metal. It gives it a bit more protection. It's more like a skid plate, and you can see the marks on there. I haven't got the one fitted to that, but you can put it on there as well. But you can see there's just some marks on there. It doesn't really affect the reliability. It's just a nice little upgrade. I think it's worth doing. And if you want to keep the truck in a nice condition, you know, these bits will protect it. If you're taking it on a lot of stony areas, it just protects it. So we like that. And again, it's not particularly expensive. And with a lot of the kits, you get a protection to the rear axle as well. So that gives it more protection to these plastic parts here, and the axle does take a lot of bashing, and you can see from the alloy arms we were just talking about the marks that have appeared on them. So they're a worthwhile upgrade if you can afford it, and it's not a particularly expensive one. So we said we'd do 5 upgrades, but a bonus. These hexas, get rid of them, put alloy ones on. The standard ones are crap. They melt, they don't get a good contact into the wheel. These ones are just better. Word of warning though, they do come on different offsets, so this distance here can be longer or wider, so it moves your wheel out a bit further, so it gives you a bit of a wider track. Affects the handling a little bit, and also it moves the nut further on its axle, so there's less thread exposed after the nut goes on your axle. So you need to make sure your nuts are good and tight. The nylock on the nut is good so they don't come undone. But I hope that's been helpful. Do you agree or disagree with what we've put on there for our upgrades? Then please do leave a comment, like, share and subscribe, and thank you for watching.